when information and power has shifted from institutions, organizations, to individuals, when the individual has the access to information and therefore has the power to make decisions, self-leadership is king. Self-leadership is king. Because if you can't lead you, please don't lead me. Right? In a time when self-leadership is king, those who can't get themselves to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether they feel like it or not, and still do it well, don't lead, they lose, right? Self-leadership, the ability to get yourself to do what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not, and still do it well. There's a quote from Dan Burris, a friend of ours. Dan's a futurist. He says, it's a mistake to assume people know what they might want, because if they don't know what's possible, they ask for too little. Isn't that the truth? So part of our job as leaders is to stretch people's expectations. The more they expect, the more they get ready for. The more they get ready for, the more possibilities they have, and the person with the most possibilities usually wins. See, if you don't get ready for your opportunity, it's not your opportunity. So here's a leader's dilemma. All right, what if I train my people and then they just leave? Well, that's a valid concern. Here's a more important concern. What if you don't? And they stay. That would be self-inflicted mediocrity. Okay?
Jim Cathcart. Grow your business and expand your life. Create solutions and make connections.
The first thing we've got to do is make sure that the critical technology is handled. The CBLF servers. You know, in any suite of technology, the server is what makes it all work. Okay? Would there be any questions at this point? Oh, here, carbon-based life forms. Yes, the human factor. If that's not handled, it doesn't matter how good the rest of it is, does it? I get to Tulsa. I'm looking around for a breakfast place. And I wanted to repeat the pattern I had set up in Little Rock, so I looked around and I found the symbol of my preferred restaurant at the time, right there about a mile from the new office. There were the golden arches sticking up through the trees. I pulled in under them and parked my car, walked into the lobby of McDonald's, and there behind the counter were two women. One was in her 20s, one was a teenager. And as I approached the counter, the 20-year-old said, "Good morning, what's your name?" I almost went into shock. I mean, think about that. To be asked your name in a McDonald's? I stood there, I said, and she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "You asked my name." She said, "The question was too hard?" No. She said, "Then what is it?" I said, "It's Jim Cathcart." "And I'll have an Egg McMuffin and coffee." She said, "Fine, that'll be $1.41. So I paid my $1.41. I got my breakfast, started to walk away. Teenager turned to the 20-year-old. She said, "Hey, Grandma, where are the coffee cups?" "You're a grandmother?" She said, "No, I'm in my 20s. I said, and she said, "Well, you know, they call me Grandma. It's my nickname because I'm sort of the mother hen around here." And I said, "Well, what do you like to be called?" She said, "You can call me Grandma. My name's Marilyn." And I said, "Okay, Grandma," you know, and I went on my way. Now, I came back day after day, and every time I came back, I had the same breakfast. It cost $1.41, and she asked my name every time until after a few days she remembered the name. Then one morning, as I pulled into the parking lot, I knew, from what I saw in the parking lot, I knew I had a challenge in the lobby. What would you see in a McDonald's parking lot that would indicate a challenge in the lobby? 2 buses, both completely empty. Now, 2 buses with, what, 45 people per? Empty in a parking lot means 90 head ready to graze in the lobby of this McDonald's. I parked my car, I walked up there, squeezed through the door, looked for the line that was moving fastest, the one that stops when you get in it, right? Sure enough. And then I heard my name, Mr. Cathcart, Mr. Cathcart. And I look up at the front. It's Grandma, Marilyn. I said, yes. She said, your breakfast is ready. Excuse me. Oh, I'm coming through. Pardon me. Walked up to the front, reached for my $1.41. She says, nah, it's on the house. How's it going there? Yo. Went into the dining room and dined, if you can do that, on an Egg McMuffin. Now, here's my question for you. At that particular moment, what do you figure the odds were I might return? Yeah. You figure pretty good, extremely good, or a slam dunk certainty. Okay? But the question is not would I come back, the question is why would I come back? The cuisine? Not the product? Perhaps the price. That was a good price. Place, what would I come back for? Exactly. Grandma. I'd come back, actually it goes one step beyond that, but that's the right answer. I'd come back for the way she made me precisely. Precisely. The vast majority of the things we do in life are done to get the feelings we want.
In the 1980s, Jim Cathcart's groundbreaking book, Relationship Selling, revolutionized business practices by focusing on truly connecting with customers instead of just making sales. In the 1990s, his ACORN principle explored the psychology that drives self-improvement. Today, Jim teaches the 8 competencies of sales leadership, new skills for a new business era.
If you are perceived to be persuading rather than partnering, you always meet with resistance. It's instinctive. They don't even have to think about resisting you. They just do. And it may be on a subtle level. Neither of you are aware of it until it becomes a problem. But it's happening. So if you and I can figure out how to keep people in the right frame of mind from the start, then we don't fall into that posture. What I was doing for a living was repossessing log trucks in the hills of northern Arkansas. Life-threatening work. On a typical day, I'd drive down a deserted logging road way back in the woods, find the truck I was looking for. I'd park my company car and walk over to the truck, trying to look bad, you know. I'd look up at that truck. This big hair-covered creature would come down out of it. I mean, they were always huge. And I'd look him square in the chin. I'd say, I'm here to get your truck. And they would say to me, boy, I don't know if you've noticed, but we're alone in these woods. I'd start backing up for the company car. They'd say, just go away and leave me alone. I'd say, yes, sir, I'm out of here. And I'd get back in the car, and I'd start to pull away. I'd say, excuse me, one comment before I leave. I'm the last nice guy they plan to send. See ya. They say, wait, don't drive off yet. What do you mean, the last nice guy? I'd say, well, after this, it gets pretty ugly. They send these big bruisers with guns and sheriffs. It's not a pretty sight. And they said, well, what are my alternatives? And I'd say, set the gun down. Sometimes literally was true. And they'd set the gun down, and I'd say, here are your alternatives. 9 times out of 10, I'd get a payment or a partial payment or something. If they had no money at all, they'd drive the truck back to the dealer, and I'd give them a ride home. So I did okay as a bill collector, but I didn't like the work. Well, the guy who took over after me, his name was Pete Smith. The reason I chuckle is Pete made a serious tactical mistake. He went directly from the Marine Corps into bill collecting. I think you can see the problem. Got any Marines in the room? I used to ask if we had any ex-Marines, then I found out it's a permanent condition, right? Yeah. Once a Marine, Marine. Well, Pete came out of the Marines thinking he was bad. He got on the job, and when he'd call on somebody, he'd express the kind of attitude that his drill instructors had expressed toward him. These aren't his words, but I guarantee you this captures the tone. He'd ring a doorbell, someone would answer, he'd say, all right, Smith's the name, credit's the game. Want your money, your wife, your car, or your life, you make the call. Well, it took him about 10 days with that attitude before he encountered Monroe. Now, Monroe had been giving me partial payments for months. He was always paying something, but he was always behind. Pete decided it was time to clean up the account, so he went out there, banged on the door, yelled out a challenge to Monroe, who accepted the challenge. 15 seconds later, Pete was a quivering lump, and Monroe was disappearing into the sunset with the truck, never to be seen again. Pete went in the hospital for 14 days from that little 15-second encounter. Broken bones, lacerations, bruises. I mean, he was really hurt. And I was looking at that thinking, now why in the world would he get beaten up when the same guy was giving me payments? Maybe it's education, so I checked our file. Same education. I thought, I'll bet it's training. So I looked in our training file. We'd both been through the company's 3-part course, which at that time was, these are your accounts, these are your business cards, good luck. So we knew our job at about the same level. What was the main difference between me and Pete? Absolutely, it was frame of mind or attitude. It was the way we saw what we were doing. He saw these people as adversaries. He was fighting against them. He was trying to get these errant children to behave. You know, you pay your bills. You signed the contract, right? He was scolding people. He was reprimanding people. And he always ended up in a fight, whether verbally or otherwise. I knew if I did that, I'd never have offspring. So I said, there's got to be a better way. Now, this was not wisdom. This was survival. And I just said, there's got to be a better way. So I'd go out and call on people, and I'd say, look, the company sent me to show you how to get us off your back. And they'd say, well, sit down. You want some coffee? I mean, seriously, people would cooperate with me because I didn't approach it as their adversary or as their parent or as their jailer. I would approach it as a person that's there to help them solve a problem that was obviously very uncomfortable for them as well as annoying to the company. And virtually every time, I got payments from people. And it was mostly from the frame of mind with which I approached what I was doing.
In his 25 years of professional speaking, Jim has addressed thousands of audiences in virtually every field. After years as a corporate executive and training director, Jim headed up a psychological research firm, exploring the multiple aspects of human personality. Today, Jim continues to explore new ways of learning as one of the 3 co-founders of MentorU.com, an innovative online learning company. Jim Cathcart combines the substance and knowledge of an industry expert with the highly developed presentation skills of a professional performer.
Well, back in 1979, I was in Chicago to give a speech for an outfit called Tidy Car. How many of you know what Tidy Car is? Few of you do. Tidy Car is an auto detailing company. And Tidy Car, back in those days, was a company which sold franchises for $1,500, little kit. So you'd get this polishing material and this tool with which to do what they called preserve-a-shine. And you could go out and start your own auto detailing business. And they were selling these things like hotcakes. I mean, that was the heyday of franchising. So back in those days, lots of people were buying Tidy Car franchises, and Tidy Car realized they had to start training these people. So they brought in speakers like me to come and address them once every month or so around the country. Well, I was the flavor of the month for Chicago, so I showed up and I gave my speech. It was about maybe 200-300 people in the audience. At the end of my speech, a young guy, 19 years old, came up to me, innocent-looking face, looked like he'd never even had a dirty thought. I mean, just, you know, white hair, white eyebrows, and just this little smile on his face. His name was Tim Seward. And Tim Seward came up to me and he said, Mr. Cathcart, could I sit with you at lunch? And I said, certainly. So he sat with me, asked me 1,000 questions. At the end of lunch, he said, one more question? I said, sure. Do you have a quote or a slogan, a motto that you could give me as a daily motivator? And I said, well, let me think about that. I said, I've got something better, Tim. I've got a question. And here's the question. Every day, ask yourself this question as often as you can remember to ask it. How would the person I would like to be do the things I'm about to do? Don't think of someone else. Think of you in the future as you grow and mature and advance. How would the more refined version of you do the work you're setting out to do right this moment or during this day? In other words, if you keep thinking like an acorn, you will remain an acorn. So you've got to think like an oak. He said, well, I'd like to be the international sales leader for Cathcart. I said, good. Use that question. What happened was he went back home to Bay City, Michigan. He got rid of his T-shirt and jeans, and he put on a little jumpsuit. Had Tim embroidered on the pocket, Cathcart on the back. So now he looks more professional because he figured the international sales leader wouldn't wear a T-shirt and jeans, right? Then he started organizing his files better. And then he got a picture of a Corvette, which they were going to give to the international award winner that year. And he put that over his bed, and he put another picture of a Corvette over his workbench so he'd see it every day. And that inspired him to think like the international sales leader. He ended up growing his business so well that he had to hire other people to work with him and ultimately had to lease a service station so he had a permanent location. His business absolutely thrived. You see, we can take one simple question and just shift our perspective enough to give us profound insights that will transform the results we get. But it takes the stimulus to start the process. So Cathcart called me again. They said, Jim, we're having a convention in New Orleans. We're giving away a Corvette. Want to speak? You bet. So I go to the Hilton Hotel in the French Quarter down in New Orleans, standing there in front of a large group of the Cathcart franchisees from around the world, and they say, Jim, as soon as you give your keynote speech, we're going to give the award. I said, who won? They said, not telling. I said, okay. So I get up there and give my speech. I hand the microphone over to the president of the company. He steps up and he says, ladies and gentlemen, what a contest. Listen to these numbers. The person who came in number 2 led number 3 by only 1 point. 1. 3 led 4 by 1 point. 4 led 5 by 2 points. 5 led 6 by 1 point. Tight competition. Except for number 1. The person who leads this contest, number 1, the international sales leader, led the contest with 300 more points than number 2. For first place, there was no competition. Welcome with me. Your international sales leader from Bay City, Michigan, Tim Seward. The place went insane. Everybody dancing, screaming, cheering, hugging each other. A few people took advantage of that. It was fun. Everybody's having a good time. They bring Tim on their shoulders to the front of the room. They put him on the stage. He's up there caressing the Corvette as much as you can do that to a vehicle. I came over, I gave him a bear hug, and I congratulated him. I said, Tim, what did you do? He said, I just did what you said in Chicago. I said, specifically. What did I say in Chicago? He said, come on, Jim, you know. The daily question, how would the person I'd like to be do the things I'm about to do? And he told me the story I shared with you a little while ago. And I said, wow, I'm so proud of you. That's great. And he said, oh, it gets better. What? He said, well, you know, I didn't know if I'd won. I knew I was in the running, but I didn't know if I'd won. So I'm getting ready to come to New Orleans to the convention, and I'm thinking, okay, how would the international sales leader go to New Orleans? I figured he'd go first class. One way. I said, wait a minute, Tim. You didn't know you'd won. He said, correct. I said, but you bought a first class one-way ticket to New Orleans and you didn't know you were the winner. He said, right. I said, doesn't that seem a little foolhardy? He said, hey, Jim, think I'll need a ride home? So 1998, here I am. I'm in Fort Myers, Florida, at the airport. I'm being met by a 39-year-old man, Tim Seward. 39-year-old man. He's driving me, not in a Corvette, but in his SUV. He's driving me to his home in Naples, Florida, where we're having dinner by his indoor pool. And he tells me about his life. Well, I sold my tidy car business, made a pretty good, a bit of money on that. I sold that business after the one that I formed after Tidy Car, and then I built another business, and I just sold that business this last December, he said, for $7 million. He said, I'm 39 now, so I retired to Florida. He said, what I do now is I fly my wife and son around the world to see the places we want to see, and when I'm at home, I take classes to get my MBA. I said, Tim, I've just got one question. He said, what's that? I said, do you have a quote? Or a slogan, or a motto, something I could use for a daily motivator. True story, here's what he said. Yes, Jim, ask yourself every day, how would the person I'd like to be do the things I'm about to do?
A consummate professional, Jim Cathcart has received virtually every honor his industry offers. Certified Speaking Professional, Speaker Hall of Fame, the Cabot Award, past president of the National Speakers Association and member of the exclusive Speakers Roundtable. In the year 2001, the 190,000 members of Toastmasters International honored Jim with the Golden Gavel Award for Lifetime Achievements in Speaking. Let Jim Cathcart show your people how to grow their business and expand their lives. You will be proud that you did.